like, hey, Sylvester Stallone would like to meet with you. And I'm like, what? I remember him saying, Albertson, I like the cut of your jib. Let's do this. And I thought this is going to be easy, and it was not. A lot of people who work with Sly are just afraid of him. It's manipulation. It's what I love about filmmaking. It's emotional manipulation.
Don't forget to subscribe. We're on YouTube and all these other. Yeah, hit the button. See, I told you guys this was going to be a winner today. Hey everyone, I am Rafi Salem, back with another Talking with MEWShop. Today's amazing guest is Sean Albertson. Welcome, Sean. And of course, we've got Josh Apter and Jason Banke from Manhattan Edit Workshop. So, Josh, why don't you and Jason take it away, and then you'll introduce Sean.
Sure. Well, I mean, look, this is why I do this job. I could lie and say I like to teach like keyboard shortcuts. But you can learn that on YouTube now. Part of our classes, we always like to talk about the why of editing, not just the how of editing. And so, so it's always a thrill to get to talk to people who are out there doing it, especially movies that I kind of love. You've got a couple in your hip pocket right behind you. So, it's just good to have a conversation about creative process, and it makes for and otherwise, my Tuesday wouldn't be this exciting. Now it is. So, thank you for coming in. Jason, what do you want to say?
Sean's got some great work, and we had him recently as an artist in residence, I think, right? Yes.
Yeah. Just a few weeks ago.
And I think we first crossed paths through Filmmaker U. You did. Do you think you came on twice? I think you've come on twice. Once,
Yeah. I've done with Gordon twice. Yes.
Yeah, I don't remember what the other one was for. But imagine,
it was a long time ago.
Definitely a creepy movie. I'm sure we could talk about that. But yeah, I mean, we just recorded and we'll talk about that later coming up. But Josh, we just did a great recording yesterday. I'm sure this one will be great too. About the process is the fun of this. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and with that, I guess you could start telling us about what you're working on or what we're doing, and we can.
Well, give us some past history, Sean. Like I like to get into the nuts and bolts of elementary school, high school, college.
He's a Long Island boy, right? Didn't you grow up in New York?
Yeah, Long Island.
Mm-hmm.
Hey.
Yeah. Why, is anybody else a Long Islander here?
Yeah. I live on Long Island right now.
He lives
born and raised.
Nice.
Absolutely.
Look at us.
So, Sean, give us some background.
I'm Philly. Sorry, I have a superiority complex because I'm from Philly, and I hate the Giants. But otherwise, yeah.
That's all right. Because I grew up in Long Island, the Jets are my team.
Okay.
Sometimes, unfortunately,
almost even worse. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, grew up in Long Island. So both of my parents, I grew up in and around the film industry. Both of my parents were. My dad was an editor. My mom was a production manager, sometimes AD. In the 70s and 80s, when like New York was like booming, there was so much production, huge movies being produced in New York. And I mean, the short story is I was a musician. My dad was a chef before he became an editor, and he was also a musician. And my plan was to not go to college and sort of travel around with one of my bands and see if I could make it in music. And apparently, I was told later, after I told my parents this, my mother freaked out and said to my dad, take him to work and show him that like you got to work hard or make a living, or I can't remember what it was, but I was always in trouble. Like I was a musician who was always in trouble. Like I was doing drugs and getting into trouble all the time. And my parents thought I would end up dead or in jail, I think. And so my dad dragged me into Manhattan into his editing room, and I sat around for a month just sort of watching and learning. And then he handed me off to an old assistant editor of his who was cutting his first film on 16 millimeter film. This is 1986. And I became an unpaid intern on that. learned sort of the language of the editing room, and I don't know, probably about 8 months later, I was offered a job as an apprentice editor, a union apprentice editor. So I got into the union. I was making $480 a week, which I was like, I'm freaking rich. And I ran out and bought myself a brand new car. Like that didn't
I was gonna say
work
you
out.
brought yourself a drum kit. No,
I bought myself a brand new car that a couple of years later, my parents had to help me continue to pay for because I'm making 400, whatever. It seemed like a lot of money. But, but I wasn't, it was sort of, it started for me as like a thing to do and the money after high school. And it wasn't something I was passionate about. I loved movies. But editing didn't seem like something I was passionate about. And when I was an apprentice and an assistant editor, I was just doing a lot of sort of menial tasks and getting paid for it. And the pay went up, and I was like, wow, this is great. I'm making money. But I was missing something, and I'd always been a real creative kid and grown up in a family of creators. Music, movies, food. And I had sort of had it, and I was going to get out of the business and go to culinary school finally, which that was one of my passions. Music didn't work out, by the way. I was not that good of a musician, and somebody who I went to high school with, but I didn't really know, was an NYU film student, and had started asking around if anyone knew of an editor who could help him edit his senior thesis at NYU. And somehow he got to me. People were like, yeah, Sean Albertson's a film editor. I was not. And what happened was I took the gig, and I asked my dad to help me. And my dad, who was running, he wasn't editing at the time. He was running Tadeo East in Manhattan at the time, and he gave us an editing room there, and he would sit with me and the director and help us edit this thing and talk about the creative choices and how to make something work. And what my dad taught me in that process, he having been a musician and a chef, was the correlation for me between what I loved about cooking and music to storytelling for the screen via editing. And something just clicked inside of me. And I was like, everything I was searching for creatively, I could get from film editing, from filmmaking, from writing, from, just storytelling for the screen. So that was my in to the business.
You're not the first person to, like, we've had a lot of students who have a background in music.
Mm-hmm.
They have a natural sense of rhythm.
Yep.
That for pacing, for dialogue, not just for it informs them and their choices. So I get that, but like, how did music and food connect into this kind of storytelling for you?
Well, so the best way for me to describe how food connects to it is I was working with a director early in my career, and invited he and his wife over for dinner, and I cooked them dinner, and we had a nice, lovely time, and we were sitting eating, and he said, I'm sure I'm paraphrasing because it was a long time ago, he said something to me like, watching you cook is very much like sitting behind you and watching you edit my movie. You try a little of it. Like my dad was, and so I became I'm not a recipe kind of cook. I'm like hey, try this kind of cook. And
you're an iron chef.
I'm an iron chef, and sometimes I really fuck it up, and my family is not happy about what I cook. But that's the thing. It's like, this much garlic powder. Taste it. That's not quite working. Let's you know, add some more of this, take some more of this. And that's what this director sort of pointed out to me. And it was a great way to kind of boil down what I think, why I think editing in particular really connects to cooking for me. And in terms of music, like you said, it's so much about rhythm, right? And so dialogue in particular, I mean, everything that I edit is about rhythm, and you do find this natural rhythm, and I do think that some of it can be learned, and then I've seen plenty of editors who are pretty successful and and do great things, and I'll look at a dialogue scene and say, like, there's just not that natural sort of human dialogue pattern that you want, or to use tempo and rhythm to create a feeling or an emotion or a build, right? And that's for me, that's completely connected to music. It's the same thing when you're writing a song, playing a song. It's all about rhythm and building and connecting, with and it's manipulation. It's what I love about filmmaking. It's emotional manipulation, and so yeah. So for me, it's completely connected to music and rhythm. And
I'll add in one thing, Sean. Interestingly, Josh, Jason, please remind me, what's the name of the woman who's also a dancer? She was a musician and a dancer.
You mean the Rockette?
Are you talking about people that we've talked to?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. No, this is a student of ours.
Carol. We talked to two people. Stephanie Philo, I think, was a dancer.
Yeah, she was.
Steph Philo. Yeah. So, Sean, what you're saying so resonates with what you're saying. But throw in that dance part, the whole rhythm and the movement. It's really fascinating.
And I think so. It occurs to me as we're talking about it that's why I think musicians tend to. And by the way, I know a lot of editors who were percussionists because rhythm is such a big part of it. And I think that again, I think people who come from music into film editing have an advantage for that reason. And then like you say, like, otherwise you start learning, like, oh, that feels clunky, like it. So over the years playing music and editing a bunch of shit, it's like, oh yeah, I know how that should feel as an audience member. I know how I want that to come across as an audience member. And it's all about rhythm. It's all about what the timing is, what particular second and what moment you cut to somebody's eyes, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so there was a couple things, like John Sayles wrote a great book, Thinking in Pictures, years ago, and talking about the relationship between how we see people, from what distance we see people, at what point in the scene are we going in. It's really kind of amazing. But I then just more recently watched somebody who was teaching the diagonal scales on the guitar. So it's like, and he said, you can learn the pentatonic scales, that's just fine, but this way it's actually bringing you up and down the neck. And if you want to tell a story, it's easier to sort of start here. You're working your way up to this crescendo and then bringing yourself back down. A lot of people who play guitar, they are using that scale because it's naturally telling a story. And I never thought about it that way, like that your playing is actually creating an arc like that.
Yeah, and what you just said is such a great way to put what so I do a lot of fix-it jobs, right? Like, I'll get a call, the studio's not happy with a movie, it's not working, and 9 times out of 10, that's the issue, is that there is no build to crescendo and then coming back down, and that and so and what happens is studio execs or producers will start saying it's lagging, it just needs to be faster, and then they just start cutting stuff out without thinking, so the word pace, I'm like, pacing is not a curse word, and it doesn't mean faster. Pacing means building, reaching a crescendo, and resting at the right time, and so like what you just said is so perfect. such a perfect correlation to that.
Yeah, I hate watching, like, I haven't been a feature editor in a long time, but I used to put, when you put your first rough cut together and every scene's like beginning, middle, end, beginning, middle, end,
Yeah.
beginning, middle, end. You're just watching this thing sort of just like, geez, like,
Yeah,
do we
it's
need,
like,
and you learn like, well, maybe I need the beginning of that scene, but not the end, because it points you toward that other scene. I can start that one in the middle and connect the sort of middle feeling of the movie. And, it's just, I don't know. There's no way I can't describe it very easily, but I do remember the fun of like saying like, yeah, I don't need that. I'm there already. Like I said that 5 scenes ago.
right.
So I can just pick up here and, people are there on the ride.
And that's why I love fix-it jobs or doctor jobs, sometimes they call it, because because it's so much easier for me to see that when somebody else has already put it together. And that moment, I'm always asking the question of like, what is the scene about? What's the turning point? And then once we get to the turning point and we learn what we need to learn, that should project us into the next scene. So the audience feels like, oh, I have to be wherever they just took me, as opposed to like, because you write a scene and then you write an ending like you were talking about. And I'd say, 7 times out of 10, not only do you not need that ending, but it's stopping you from feeling like you're progressing through a story.
Yeah, too many resolutions,
right?
in the middle. What's that?
The fix-ups job, Sean. Like when you do that, like, do you literally just go in and tweak what's there, or do you really like start going back and say get back to the dailies, or do you say like we need reshoots? Like how do you do that? Like what is your
so the answer is yes to all of that. So it depends on how much time they're willing to give me, right? So every time I get a call for a recut, they're like, we just have a couple of weeks, maybe 2-3 weeks. And at this point, I used to take those jobs years ago. And at this point, I'm like, here's the deal. At least 6 to 8 weeks for me to get through everything, know all the footage, show you a new version of the cut. And by the way, that includes sound and music. And so, I really need 8 weeks to go through and do it. And I do sort of a mixture of everything that you just laid out, which is, unless somebody specifically says, I want you to just start from scratch. And they're going to give me the time and I put the cut aside and I just start as though I was the original editor on the movie. But what I'll usually do is I'll watch the cut that they don't like. The next thing I will do is watch the first editor's assembly, which I will say always has something brilliant in it. And then I will usually work from the cut that they sent me. And then, I start scene by scene. I start scene 1 and I watch the cut and I know all the things that bother me about it and all the things I'd like to fix. And then I just start. And sometimes I will go to the scene bin and look at everything, or I'll scroll through and say, okay, now I know what my angles are to choose from. And when I get to a performance issue or line reading or something that's just not working, then I'll go back and start looking at everything for that thing. It really, I don't have a super specific way I go about it, other than like, when I see an issue, I just dive in. And sometimes that issue is something I can fix on the fly with like where the edit is. Sometimes it's like I got to go for another angle. Sometimes the performance just sucks and I need to, protect that performance. And so it's kind of a mixture of all. But what the problem I often run up against, which Maggie, I'm busy. You know what? Like, I gotta just let her out this door.
Probably one of the smartest things I've ever done for my career. It gave me all the tools that I needed to be able to jump into a new career.
getting myself into a mindset, thinking like an editor, and being around people that I can talk to on that level was really invaluable to me.
A lot of the things that I learned from that class, I still think about.
I loved the classroom. I loved the computer stations. We built a sense of community.
And it also instills a lot of confidence in you to take that and go out into the world.
After I took the class, I felt very prepared to take the next step.
I owe Manhattan Workshop the career that I have right now. Things have been going great, and I really have the Manhattan Workshop to thank for that.
We're back. All right. I thought you had one. I didn't know you had two dogs. I only saw the one dog's leg sticking out from behind you.
Yeah.
So.
I have two dogs. They're crazy. And I played fetch with them out there just before we started, hoping that would keep them calm, but it didn't.
All right.
So-
Well, I just did one yesterday, and my dog was alternately passed out on the couch and barking like an insane rabid dog at the doorbell. So it comes with the territory.
It comes with remote.
So we were talking about the philosophy and so many really, really deep things. I want to take it back to the tactical. So Sean, did you just basically just start working in Hollywood right out of that high school musical career, culinary, into the kitchen, into making blockbuster films, or
No.
was there a little bit of due diligence? Like you said, you worked with that NYU film, and then you got into big blockbuster movies. What was in between?
Right. No, that's not how it happened. So I had the opportunity to work as an apprentice editor, an assistant editor. So that student film that I edited was very early on, when I was like an apprentice, maybe a second assistant editor at that time. And then I got hired by an amazing old editor named Sam Osteen, who had who you guys, I'm sure you guys know Bobby.
Who doesn't know Bobby?
Yes. And so I was hired as a second assistant for Sam Osteen back in, I don't know, 90. And I was on for the movie Wolf, Consenting Adults by Alan Pakula. I got to work on some of the best directors' worst films as an assistant editor. It was the movie Wolf, which I think was terrible. Mike Nichols, a brilliant filmmaker. Alan Pakula, a brilliant filmmaker, and a guy that I really just fell in love with. He was such a lovely dude. A movie called Consenting Adults, which was also pretty bad. But I got to work with Sam as a second assistant editor in New York, and then I was so after Wolf, Mike and Sam decided not to work together anymore. Like I said, it was a bad movie. It was a very stressful movie. I guess they had issues. It's hard to know, because it was the first Avid project, first digital editing project. So I was off in another room while they were locked in a room, and they decided not to work together anymore. And Mike was going off to do The Birdcage. And he was hiring an editor named Artie Schmidt. He was working without Sam for the first time in like 30 some odd years. Mm-hmm. And I got a call from Mike, and he said, I would like you, he had offered the assistant editor job to Sam's first assistant, who decided he didn't want to go against Sam. And Mike called me and said, I'd like you to be on the crew. I'd like somebody who I know and, who knows how I do things. And he flew me out to LA to meet Artie Schmidt. And in that phone call with Mike, I said, I would love to, but I really want to edit. I'd love to be able to actually put my hands on and do some editing. I don't know. I was like a 20-year-old kid or something. And I was like telling Mike Nichols I want to be an editor on his movie. And he said, okay, I'm going to fly you out to LA, and you're going to meet Artie, and let's see how it goes. So I went out to LA, I met Artie, we had lunch, it was great. He was like, great, I'll hire you. We start the movie, The Birdcage, and the short of it is he pulled me into his office one day, and he said, I don't like the way the editing room is being run. And I said, okay, I'll talk to our first assistant editor. And he said, you're the first assistant editor. And then it all came out that I thought I was going to be an additional editor. And he said, absolutely not. Do you want the job? I said, sure. And then he fired me 2 weeks later. But what happened at that point was I decided to stay in LA. I had also sort of chased a woman out to LA. And so I decided to just stay there. And I was like, I want to be an editor now. And I started cold calling, and I think is the 90s. Maybe I was literally like sending print resumes out to heads of post-production and you name it. I called and I mailed, and I got a guy named Andrew Gullove on the phone, who is an executive at Aaron Spelling TV, and I was like, I'm an editor and you should hire me. And he was like, come on in, kid, let's talk. And he got me on the first show I was ever an editor on, and it was called Nightstand for E Network. And it was a faux Jerry Springer talk show. It was a comedy. It was scripted. And I was the only editor, and I didn't really know how to use the Avid, and I had a girlfriend, and she knew nothing about post-production, and they hired her as the post-production supervisor, and it was crazy. But I kind of kicked ass in there, and the executive from Big Ticket Television said, I want to introduce you to this junior agent. And I met this agent, and like, I don't know, she just started putting me up for movie after movie after movie. And I got my first indie movie, and it was really good. And then, just kind of just kept going from there.
So luck had nothing to do with it. It was all.
I mean, here's where the luck had something to do with it. That guy, Andrew Gullove, who is still an executive, I think he's with Miramax now. When I went in to meet him, he goes, Albertson, huh? And I said, yeah. He goes, any relation to Eric Albertson? And I said, yeah, that's my dad. And he was like, oh, shit, man, come on in. I'm going to help you out. So like, it was sort of like he had worked with my dad years ago. And so that definitely helped, But yeah,
Right place, right time.
Right place, right time. It's who you know. And then,
Wait, time out. Where's the woman today? Where's the woman today?
So we got married. We had 3 kids, got divorced, both remarried, had more kids.
See, I told you guys this was going to be a winner today. This is a 3-parter.
Yeah, this is like, we can't even cover 3 of your kids in this one.
I know, man. Like, and I have 2 stepkids now, like raised 5 kids in Los Angeles. It's crazy.
None of them are in the house still. They're all out.
The youngest just moved out. She lives here in Atlanta as well, but she just moved out like the beginning of her school year. So she's 20. She just turned 21. And then we've got 2 still living in LA, 1 in Santa Cruz, and 1 in Colorado.
Wow. All right. We've got a lot of different paths that this can go in.
I'm so sorry I talk too much.
No. This is great. Usually we talk about past history and background, and then we talk about the present of what you're working on now. But it seems like we've got a lot more than just than just that. But Josh, Jason, is there some other prompt that you want to talk about?
We can talk if we're going to really, like, if we're not in a rush to get somewhere, I'd love to talk about how you met Sly and got working on, because I think Balboa was before Rambo, right?
That's right.
Am I getting it wrong?
No, you got it right.
And like I said, I'm from Philadelphia, so you can't go there without running up the damn art museum steps, and so that's definitely part of my chemical makeup. I went to school in Philly too, so when I would go like jog a mile and a half thinking I was a hero, I would finish it. Everyone did it. There were like a group of us idiots at the top of the stairs doing the dance. But what was it like? So You got you got a junior agent, and then probably a not junior agent, but you kept getting, and it snowballed into more and more work. I don't want to condense the story, but at some point you're sitting in a room and there's Sylvester Stallone, and you said, "Hey, what happened?"
So, so I was editing a short-lived TV show called E-Ring, and I got a call. So Sly, at that point, Sly's career had just been in the toilet. There was nothing going on for him, and he apparently had decided he couldn't leave his legacy on Rocky V. Which by all accounts, it was a terrible movie. And so he set off to make Rocky Balboa as the final chapter and the goodbye to Rocky, and then he started reaching out, and then he reached out to Don Zimmerman, who had been his editor on most of his films in the 80s. He had edited a bunch of Rockies and probably some Rambos and Staying Alive, maybe, I don't know. And nobody wanted to go near it. He tried to hire Chris Wagner, who I guess was going to do it, and then something kind of better came up, and everybody was like, nobody's asking for another fucking Rocky. Like, just don't do it. And so he went after all these big editors, and it just so happened that I had worked with Don on Cat in the Hat, because it was the first movie he was editing on Avid, not Lightworks/Heavyworks. And I had already been editing on Avid for years. I was doing a lot of TV movies for USA, and my wife at the time was a post executive at Universal, and she was like, "Let me introduce you to my husband and see," and so they took me on as sort of like an Avid, I don't know, associate editor kind of thing, and so Sly called Don to ask him to edit this movie, and Don was like, "Yeah, I don't want to do that, but you should talk to this kid Sean." And so he did. So I got a call, and they were like, "Hey, Sylvester Stallone would like to meet with you." And I'm like, "What?" And I went and I met with him, and it was an interesting meeting because I grew up, like, I credit the original Rocky as one of the movies. I think I was like, I don't know, 8 years old or something when I saw that movie. Mm-hmm. And I remember this moment that I always come back to as a filmmaker. I remember at the end of that movie, I was crying, and I didn't understand why. Like, I understood, like, I was okay. I wasn't in need of anything in particular. And yet I was crying, and I've always had that memory of, like, this is this amazing, powerful thing that storytelling does. Like, an 8-year-old kid is crying, and I'm like, like, I'm happy for him. Why am I crying? And so it was amazing to just get to go and meet the fucking guy. Like, I was like, I grew up in the 80s, like that. He was a hero. And so I sit down, and I had read the script, and he asked me what I thought of the script, and me being me, I said, "It's good, but I don't really see an inciting incident. Like, why does he go back to fighting? Like, it seems like he's got a pretty good life. He's got a restaurant, and yeah, he's got a little thing with his kid, but like," and he goes, "It's all in here." And I was like, okay. And I came to learn, like, he's a writer who just kind of puts some stuff on paper, but it's not like, he's not writing the way other writers write, of like, you stop to explain how somebody is receiving something or how something may be feeling. He doesn't write that. He just writes words. He just writes dialogue. And so I'm getting no sense as the reader, as to how is this supposed to play emotionally. And it is, for him, it's all in here. And he rewrites constantly. Like literally he'll have the camera pointed to that side of the room, and he turns the camera around to this side and he rewrites the fucking dialogue. So you've got mismatching things going on. So anyway, so we had that, I did that thing, and apparently he appreciated that I had an opinion, and I remember him saying, "Albertson, I like the cut of your jib. Let's do this." And that was it. And I got that. That was a huge opportunity for me. I had never edited a movie that big, and I'd never edited a movie that was going to get that was going to be on that many screens. And the thing is that like with Stallone, you've got a built-in audience, right? So like suddenly I edited a movie that like people went to the theaters to see, and like people are quoting, and like you said, that speech on the street to his son. So it was an amazing experience. It was very intense. I thought having been on this very intense TV show, this is going to be great, because I was working on 3 episodes at a time. It was a crazy show. And the showrunner on that show really was counting on me in a lot of ways to kind of hold the fort down. And I thought this is going to be easy, and it was not. Like Sly is a shooter, man, and tons of material. And one other story I'll tell you about that one is the first thing he shot was the fight. Was the last act, the fight, and it was in Vegas, and I was in Vegas, and he shot that thing for 6 days at the MGM Grand Arena, and we would go into the back room and watch dailies every day. This was back when people would still watch dailies at lunchtime or after wrap, and on day 5 or day 4 night. We're watching dailies, and he goes, and there's the first thing they shot. I haven't cut anything. I'm there in Vegas for whatever reason. I can't remember why he asked me to be there. And he said, Sean, can you go back to LA, and I need you to edit all these fights together. So before we wrap this location, which is in 2 days, I know what I've got. That was one of the scariest things I've ever done. So I ran back to Burbank and just started cutting, fight. And I'm making my crew do sound, and I'm like trying to put bits of music and send it off to him the next morning, and don't hear anything for 4 days. And I thought, that's it. I'm done. My career's over. Turned out he liked it. And he, it's like he liked it a lot. And so that kind of started our creative partnership for a while.
Yeah, no, it's that was not the last one. You never made one after that?
That was the last Rocky, and then it was Creed after that.
Oh, right. Okay, because he has been Rocky since then, but this was really the last Rocky movie.
That was the last Rocky movie. And I rarely go back and look at movies that I've edited. I went back and watched that about a year ago, and I was shocked at how we really, and this was tough with him, because that, you were saying earlier about Rambo, where like it's it's economy, man. It's like he never likes to stay in one place too long. But we really battled that with him on that movie, because he wanted it to harken back to the original Rocky. He wanted it to be a beautiful bookend to that series. And I was really glad when I went back and watched it a year ago, like we accomplished that. Like the first act there's tons of dissolves. I was like, I can't believe how many dissolves, and it just totally harkens back to that original Rocky. It was not slow, but it was meaningfully paced.
Right. I like deliberately paced.
Deliberately paced. Thank you.
Right. And Rocky was long. The first one
Yeah.
It's in no rush to, I mean, you didn't have to be then, I
Right.
guess, in the same
That's
way.
true. Yeah.
But it's it's funny because I always felt that the Balboa was fairly svelte. It's not a long movie, right?
No, it's not. I can't remember. I think it was like an hour 40 or maybe an hour 50
Oh, okay.
even.
No, that's okay.
But it definitely does take its time. We really played the drama of it, and he allowed that to happen on that one. And in my experience with him, he's never really allowed that a whole lot after that movie. But I feel really good. I'm very proud of the work that we did on that movie because to me, it's my favorite, other than Rocky 1, it's my favorite Rocky because it goes back to what I loved about that first movie, which was the drama.
Right. Wow, you didn't say Rocky 4. Can't believe that.
I mean, I like, but it's a totally different kind of movie.
Well, because it turned into 3 and 4. Like, I mean, I don't want to say jump the shark. It's not the same thing, but it's not
it's a different franchise, really.
Yeah, exactly.
But and that's the thing. It's like, Rocky 1 is a beautiful indie, a beautiful indie love story. And then it turns into, a hero story and and Mr. T and Drago and all that shit. The same thing happened with Rambo. And so I really appreciate, for me, I appreciate that I got to work on Rocky Balboa, which just brought it back to its roots. And it felt like that. And I have to say, even though Rambo 4, I guess it was called John Rambo, even though it's short, and doesn't sit any place too long, I kind of feel the same way about that series. Is that like that first movie, man, that was beautiful and dark character, right? And then it became this like massive action hero, long hair and pecs and whatever. And I feel like we were able to go a little bit back to that, like an old aging Rambo who, I don't think he ever took his shirt off in that one.
Right.
And so, yeah, I appreciate, that's what I love about filmmaking is like dark internal characters.
Well, also, I love TV because you get to live with a character for a while over seasons and seasons. And he's been so fortunate to be able to tell two character stories over 20, 30 years of their life. We're not seeing it like 13 episodes or whatever a season for 6 seasons, but you do see an evolution. And so you can see the internal struggle of someone his age at the end and why he might step in one last time. It feels in its own way like a more mature version of why he would have done what he did in the first one. Yep. So they're linked. He's very good at that. For sure.
He's brilliant at it.
So I'm gonna have to unfortunately wrap this up.
What? We just started.
We're gonna have to do a part 2. We're gonna have to do as many sequels to this talk as there are Rocky movies, I think.
I would think
lots of packs.
Yeah, lots of packs.
I was and wait, in the next ones, we're also not going to take off our shirt.
So, I'll wear a bandana in the next one.
I will. Nobody will be happy about it, but I will be shirtless. Long as I'm okay shirtless, as long as you can only see me from here up and from the front, not from the side.
That'll be in the editing and the post.
Right.
All right. So usually we wrap things up by asking what your one takeaway would be. So, interestingly, because we focused so much on Sly and on a little bit more of the industry, I'm super curious if you could tell someone, Sean, one takeaway. If you had one takeaway for someone that wants to be in this industry, a young up and coming editor, what would that one takeaway be? And then Josh and Jason, give your takeaways, and then we'll wrap things up.
I would say the one takeaway would be understand your own fears and ego issues and allow yourself to push past them and try things. Don't be afraid to have a bad idea, and don't be afraid to argue creatively for the best of the project. I think and the reason I think I say that is because, you talk about a guy like Sly, like a lot of people who work with Sly are just afraid of him. He's just a presence, right? And so like I told you, the first thing I said to him, like I was never afraid to say, that's a really bad idea. Let me try something here. And I wasn't afraid of showing him something that he might say, and he said it a lot. That's stupid. That sucks. And so, but I think those things always enable you to grow as an artist, and as a creative partner. I think people get scared of people and they're afraid of being shut down. And my greatest relationships in this business are with filmmakers who appreciate that I'm willing to come up with a bad idea, because that can spark a better idea.
Josh.
Wow. How am I going to follow? That's a great takeaway. From this conversation, as with everyone we've talked to, there's no right way to do this. There's no right way to break in. There's no right way to become successful, except the through line is work hard.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to say, I was lucky. You were fortunate. You had good fortune, but you had skill and you had the ethic and you serviced story instead of ego. And, that I think there are certain things that are common with people that we talk to. And that is, you got to put in the work. You really have to learn that craft. And whether it takes a year for you to get sort of like vaulted into a situation, or it takes you 5-10 years to work your way up that ladder, you still have to do the work. And of course that's going to help you in other ways too. Right. No one became a worse artist because they engaged in art more. But it's, you got to keep that passion for it. And, it's like, that's why we can't bottle this and offer it to students. There is no formula, except you got to really work hard and take advantage of these opportunities. And there was a little fake it till you make it with that job too. Like, you have to be willing to take some risks. And if it didn't work out, something else would have, but you didn't know if that was going to go well or not. It happened to do it, probably because you knew how to roll up your sleeves and work hard.
Jason, take us home. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sean.
No, I just wanted to say, like, fake it till you make it. Like, that's my life philosophy. That's how you learn.
Great.
Now Jason, take us home.
Well, not to be the Rocky thing, but like you seem to pick yourself up off the mat several times. Like, I think it's like, don't give up. You've clearly felt you wanted to do something different with your life. And it feels like you had moments and times where you could have just, with the thing with Mike Nichols, that situation, and then carrying it on, and you just kept at it until you found who you were, and you kept going until you met Sly Stallone and kept moving on. And we didn't even talk about the A24 stuff, which I wanted to talk about, but you just picking yourself up off the mat and keep at what you wanted to do. Mm-hmm. That's what my takeaway is.
So, Jason, what is coming up at the Manhattan Edit Workshop this month? And I know we've got Black Friday coming up. So
yeah, I'll be running some specials Black Friday, but I hope to get this out before then. But Josh and I just recorded an event we're going to be releasing for the movie Blitz. Should be pretty interesting. And we're going to record something for that movie Saturday night as well. So those two things should be coming out soon. So
yeah, this has been a real treat for us to be talking. We've been having a flurry of really amazing talks like this. So, I hope everybody enjoys them. Enjoys watching them as much as we enjoy recording them. But we'll have to come back. First, we'll have to end this one with that clip from Balboa, because
nice.
Everyone's going to be like, what is he talking about? And then the next one, when we come in across the screen, it'll be like Sean Albertson 2. Like,
Yes, and that will be shirts off and long curly
Yes.
hair. Yeah, it'll be great.
Yes, definitely. So Sean, thank you so much.
Thank
for
you
your
guys.
time
Such
today.
a blast. So much
Josh,
fun.
Jason,
Yeah, thank you.
as usual, thank you guys for being great partners in this Talking with MEWShop series. Once again, I'm Rafi Salem with Manhattan Edit Workshop. Don't forget to subscribe. So many times we do these great things and we're on YouTube and all these other, hit the button, subscribe, hit the bell, do everything you can. We've got amazing classes, courses, workshops at the workshop. And we've got these incredible recordings with these superstars who are working on blockbuster films. So on behalf of everyone here, thank you so much for watching. And we last thing, Josh, you were going to come up with something that we were going to talk that we would say to wrap like what do we say to end these things? Do we
I think it was that. It was like, subscribe, tell your friends. I don't know. We're supposed to have this is why we know we're not like professional, social media rock stars, because we don't know what that is.
Take it easy, but take it. Something like that.
No, we had wait. I'm gonna stop there.
Oh, you want to okay, we'll come up with don't cut corners, but keep on cutting.
And don't forget to pick yourself off the mat. All right, I'm gonna stop the recording. Everyone say peace on the way out.
You can pick your friends, you can pick your nose, but you can't pick your friend's nose.
Oh boy.
Yes.
All right. Say thank
All right.
you, everyone.
Thank you, Sean. We will be back for part 2, 3, and 4. And then the last episode is just going to be called Sean Albertson.
Just me.